Hello, so today we're going to talk about validity and reliability in fitness testing. Now, these are two terms that run throughout all the assignments within fitness testing. So it's really essential that you have a good grasp of what they actually mean and how you can apply them when evaluating the fitness test that you're going to perform. So by the end of this no more than 5-minute video, you're going to know what validity means and reliability means and be able to apply them to a fitness test. So reliability, it says here evidence you can trust. If you look at the first two letters, re, it also think about repeat. So if you were to repeat the test, would you get the same result? Or say, for example, you tested one person, then someone else came in the next day and tested that same person using the same test, would they get the same results? A reliable test, you would. An unreliable test, you wouldn't. Now, the reliability depends on different things. But to start with, I don't want you to think about how if someone was to train and improve, then the test would be unreliable. That's not true. A test is just a snapshot of what a person is. So if we look here at this really badly drawn timeline down here, so we can see that you test someone at the start, they may train, and then you test them at the end. So it's just a snapshot. So if someone improves their score over time by training, that doesn't mean the test is unreliable, because it's snapshots at different points in time. So this is time going along this way here, and you just test them at different times. So now the key thing is we talked about repeat, RE, reliability. That by repeating your test and you get similar results every time, it's going to show that your test is reliable. Now there's a few different things that we can take into account to see if a test is reliable. So we see the first one here. The actual test itself. Is it complex? Is there a set route that you have to memorize? For example, the Illinois agility test is quite a complex mapped out route that you have to follow, that a participant may get it right the first time, but then the second time may forget their route, and that leads to them getting a slower time. The skill needed not only to complete the test. For example, the vertical jump test, some people may jump in different ways. Some people might bend their knees more, or they may use various different techniques each time. Also, the equipment you're using, is that accurate enough to give you the same readings every time? Is the hand grip dynamometer going to give you the same strength score every time you use it? Or, due to wear and tear, it may not work. Next, we have the participant. So like we said, if you test someone one day and then someone tests them the next day, that participant, they may be tired, may not give them enough rest time, or they may not be motivated enough. Tests that require motivation, such as the 12-minute Cooper run, you're running for 12 minutes, so you're going to need to be motivated. The 60-second press-up test, you're going to have to be motivated for it, otherwise a participant won't perform as well as they actually can. So it's not going to give you an accurate idea of their muscular endurance. Next thing is the environment. If you're doing, for example, a sprint test of the Cooper run, if it's really cold outside and it's snowing, that person is probably not going to perform as well. And that relates into temperature, and then you also have the surface. For example, a slippery surface, someone's not going to be able to run as fast on that surface if doing a speed test or agility test. So these are things we have to take into account. So we look at the next example of a 30-meter sprint test. So I want you to think about the different components based on that last slide, about what might happen if you tested this one person and the next day someone else tested that same person. Now I've picked the 30-meter sprint test for a reason. And I want you to think about, will it fatigue someone too much if they do it 3 times on the Monday and then do it 3 times on the Tuesday? It's only 30 meters. Will it fatigue them? How much? Is it outside? What may affect you if you're outside, if you had to repeat that test on the Monday and the Tuesday? What about the surface? Has it been raining overnight? May that affect the surface on the Tuesday? The participant has had to turn up again, or she has had to turn up again on the Tuesday to perform tests that they don't want to do. Are they still going to be up for running as fast as they can? I want you to take these things into account, and I want you to think about the one biggest factor that is going to affect this person when doing their sprint test. Okay, validity. So validity is evidence. It says that it is reliable, but most importantly, which is relevant to the question being investigated. Now, this essentially means, does it measure what it says it does? So, is it relevant to the test? For example, a hand grip dynamometer test that tests just your grip strength, but it's supposed to test overall body strength, even though it's only testing a few of those small muscles in your forearm. Is that going to give you a good idea of overall body strength if it's talking about validity? So let's look at this example. The sit and reach test. So we can see our gentleman here. If we look at the muscles involved, we can see it's got his hamstrings, his calves, his lower back, and maybe even a bit of his thoracic vertebrae as well, the flexibility within them. Is that giving us an idea about overall body flexibility? You could argue that it isn't. However, you can see that there are lots of muscle groups involved there, and if you're flexible in most of these, what can you then assume about that person in general? Think about this guy if he was a gymnast. If he performed well on the sit and reach test, could we make the assumption that he's got good overall body flexibility? Okay. So, these are the positives and negatives regarding validity. So, especially in regards to our fitness tests. So, look back to that sit and reach test. We can assume that if he's good in the flexibility in his hamstrings and lower back, is it a good assumption that he's going to be good everywhere else? In this case, yes. Also, on the tests that we can perform, is it even possible to test something 100%? So could we test overall body flexibility with a single test? I think we're going to struggle to do that. However, there are some very good tests out there, some that you'll hopefully get to observe at the hospital that do test things like VO2 max to a very high level. If we look at the other side, we can say that it may be too specific. If we look at the gentleman here, well, let's see, make him bigger here. We can see that this guy has a really overdeveloped forearm. He is a lightweight arm wrestler, one of the best in the world. His name is Mateus. If we were to give him a hand grip dynamometer, so he's got to squeeze our little machine with his right hand, he's going to perform very well. Does that mean that he's got overall good body strength in the rest of his body? We can see now that the rest of his body is pretty undeveloped, and he probably wouldn't score too well on a strength test, even though the hand grip is telling us that he would do. So this is a prime case where the rest of the body is different to the tested body part, because the test is too specific, and there's a very good chance that the rest of the body could be different from that. So we've got to think, is that assumption good enough to tell us about the whole body, or is the test too specific? And that's essentially what validity is. So just to summarise, tests need to be both reliable and valid. We need to be able to repeat them, repeat them, and get the same results. And also, they have to test what they say they do. Now, we can evaluate every single test, and you're going to have to in your assignments. And all the tests that we do, none of them are watertight and are going to be affected by those components we looked at for reliability. And also, we can actually argue that some of them don't test what they actually say they do. So we have to think about these main questions. What could affect it if done again? And validity, is it too specific, or is the assumption that if you're good in this one area, you're going to be good in the rest of your body. Validity, does it test what it says it does?